All right, guys, TacticalRab here back again today. Hope you are all doing well and enjoying your day so far. And welcome to episode 6 of the Breaking Point podcast. Here again, joined by two wonderful gents, EasyMac and Lionman, to talk through in a, surprisingly early edition of the Breaking Point podcast this week. Also available, of course, on all the platforms you might want to listen to in an audio version, because the Super Week is just around the corner. Typically, we record these Monday for a Tuesday upload. But of course, tomorrow, and a day after you guys are watching this or listening to this, that's when the CDL Super Week, maybe the only one of the season, is going to kick off. Lots to go through today. So many crazy matches upcoming this week and massive implications for all these games. When it finishes off at the end of this week, we're going to know the seeding for the Stage 1 playoffs. And that is, of course, going to be a big deal for who's actually going to go and win that event. So, yeah, lots to talk about today, lads. How you doing, Lion?
I'm doing good. Doing very good. Can't wait for these matches. There are some... Which ones am I excited for? I think I'm actually really excited for Ultra vs. OpTic. See how that goes. But I guess we'll get into the matches soon. I'm just jumping ahead. How are you, AO?
Doing good. Just going through the week's worth of practice and then getting ready for Toronto on Monday.
Absolutely. We've all got the green screens now, looking good, leveling up the game, hopefully week by week. Let us crack on. The first story of the week, really, that came out a few days ago was, once Charlie Intel said it, it kind of became like, all right, this actually might be legit, is potentially Call of Duty for this year going back to World War II. So we saw this year, it was expected that we were going to have a Sledgehammer Games game, in theory, right? Given it's been Sledgehammer, then Infinity Ward Trek as the three developers. But the rumor has it maybe that this year, for whatever reason, Sledgehammer Games wasn't up to par, and Trek had to come in and make the Cold War game that we see now. So it seems like that Sledgehammer are going to be making this coming year's COD instead, which the big question mark was, is it potentially going to go back to Jetpacks, or is it going to be another boots on the ground title? Rumor has it, it's based in World War II, which sounds like a sequel or something very similar to World War II that we had a couple of years ago. To me, it makes sense because the whole idea is that Warzone's a thing right now and they want to make sure everything integrates. And therefore, it makes sense to say on boots on the ground. The other going room was that I think Tom Henderson said that by 2023, that's going to be Treyarch's next game. That apparently is going to have jetpacks. So supposedly, we're a couple of years away from return to jetpacks, which I guess was inevitable at some point. But I think a lot of pros would say, Austin, that they were hoping for it somewhat sooner than that. I think maybe they feel like their movement these last couple of years has got somewhat stale.
Yeah, I mean, most of the pros like AW and the jetpacks. So I think a lot of them were hoping for AW2 instead of World War II, because World War II, the competitive season was very long. It was not great CTF-wise or map pool-wise, so I don't think too many people were very excited that they chose World War II 2 compared to AW2. Just rolls off the tongue, doesn't it?
World War II 2. It's so, I don't know.
It rolls right off.
There's no way they call it that.
I mean, who knows? I think, is this the first COD that's been back-to-back in the same exact era by the same developer? I think it is, isn't it?
Oh, I mean, you have Modern Warfare, COD 4.
Oh, yeah, and the Modern Warfare game. All right, it makes sense, but they were called Modern Warfare 1.
For quite a while, though. Like, they've been flip-flopping quite a lot recently, yeah.
All right, so they were 4 in a row by Infinity Ward, but that's Infinity Ward, so, like, I mean, I would have way preferred Advanced Warfare 2, especially to see Uplink back straight away would have been unbelievable, because they are the creators of Uplink. And so seeing them go back to World War II, I don't quite understand. It seems like COVID or something has slowed down the production for them, and so they've kind of rested on their laurels and gone for something safe, as it seems. But we'll see. I'm actually excited for 2023. Black Ops 3 is still my favorite COD of all time. So if Treyarch do a good jetpack game once again, I'll be all in that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm intrigued to see what implications like a World War II return has for players, because of course you don't know if it's going to play the same way as World War II did originally. But that game was, it plays a lot different to how some of the recent games do. Slide cancelling wasn't a thing. You had the most interesting thing you could do with the movement was like the punch dive. And it was a really interesting year because a lot of the players that were so good at Infinite Warfare and the teams that were so good, such as the OpTic team, obviously, didn't have the best year in World War II. And I think there's some questions there, Austin. The fact that, okay, if we go back to World War II 2, having played, I can't believe, I don't even know what to say that anymore. Like, I don't know, I can't keep doing it. World War II, yeah, it's not World War 3. It doesn't make any sense that way. So World War 2.1, I don't know, but 2.5, whatever. But yeah, whatever they're going to call it. If there are some questions, right? These last couple of years have played the same way. There's new guys that have come into the scene, the likes of Shotzi. You know how good his movement is. If you, if we find a game like World War II where you can't really do anything that special with the movement, then all of a sudden the questions will arise like, will players that weren't so good at World War II all of a sudden not be so good again? It's always a question we have. Largely doesn't seem to make too much difference to me, but there are always some players that have their really good games. Like TJ Halley was tweeting about it, Methods was tweeting about it. These guys that were so good at that game, there's a decent chance that if you're building a team for next season, you might think, all right, we'll have a think what happened, a few years ago.
Yeah, I mean, World War II was kind of tough because while the gun metas were good, like there was no movement and there was no trophy systems, so like nade spam was heavily prevalent. When you don't have that advanced movement, a lot of it goes to fundamentals, so like rotating early so you have a setup, because it's really hard to break because you pretty much have to really be efficient at trading with each other. So if it is like that again, I think the gameplay is going to be really slow. You'll probably see CTF back. I don't know. It's not really for me. I think the game slows down too much to where it's not as exciting. I think what saved World War II was the exciting, not even really exciting, but exciting gun meta, because you had the bar, STG, and PPSH at the end, and that was kind of fun to watch. You had the FG kind of sprinkled in throughout, so it's the only saving grace on that game. But I don't know. I don't think I would like it too much if there's no. I don't even care if there's no sliding. If there's no like advanced movement, I guess, something other than sliding, then it might slow the game down too much, so it's not too fun to watch.
I think they will probably put sliding in, honestly. I think they'll have to, because when you look at all the other games lately, they've all had sliding. What was the last one that didn't? World War II. But I think like they'll probably be like, okay, the dolphin dive, it was like a half dolphin dive, it wasn't even a full dolphin dive in World War II.
It was weird.
I think they'll be like, it was weird, and so they'll think, all right, let's bring it back to somewhat more normal. If we need it to be like Warzone as well, they'll need sliding. So I think, it really depends on what they're looking for. But I would prefer if it did have sliding, honestly, because it does just give a little bit more speed to the game, especially in competitive. But either or, I'm not that happy that it's World War II. So
yeah, exactly. I guess one of the positive ways to look at it, I think the sliding point is interesting because I do enjoy the games that have at least, I don't know, maybe from a more, like, I guess I'm a more casual competitive player. Like I play league play and game battles and stuff, but not at the highest level. And having some sort of movement that you can abuse compared to some noob gives you it increases the skill gap to some degree. Maybe at the highest level, it actually increases randomness. I don't know. It's tough to say, but I definitely enjoy the fact that you can slide cancel and just completely world star a kid in pubs if the opportunity arises. I guess the other positive thing about this, regardless of whether it's World War II, Advanced Warfare 2, World War II 2, Advanced Warfare 2, I don't know, whatever. Then, regardless of that, is that Sledgehammer did a pretty good job from the competitive side last time. The league play system was talked about a fair bit. They've done a good job in Advanced Warfare with the camos and the team packs and stuff like this back in the day. And honestly, for competitive play, for fundamentally, there we go, the phone's off. For competitive play, fundamentally, they've done a pretty good job the last couple of times around. Now, the viewership in World War II, I must say, was pretty tragic. What streaming into Twitch when it was like Epsilon versus Vitality for 9,000 viewers was like, oh, this is a rough year. I don't want to go back there if the game isn't enjoyable to watch. But, I've got to say that to Sledgehammer's credit, the last couple of titles, Austin, they've done a decent job in competitive support.
Yeah, I mean, they had the best ranked play system, I think. Well, it wasn't even that great, but it was better than everything that we've had. They do really good on the team camo side, even though World War II was kind of just copy and pasted, just little blocks everywhere. The AW was actually really clean. I loved the exosuit customization they allowed for the team camos and for the world champions, the OpTic white one. So I think if Sledgehammer is in charge of the competitive scene for next year, I don't think it's going to be bad. It really always depends on the maps, honestly. if we get good maps, the year's gonna be good. If we get bad maps, it really suffers. So we don't need like an Ardennes Forest again, and that being the only map we'll see for the game mode 3. There's only so many Flak Tower, Ardennes Forest you can get over a season. So having good variety of maps will always make the game better. So I think we would be in the same boat as Treyarch. They're better than IW competitive wise, but they can be better than Treyarch, honestly, I think, if everything goes well, kind of like how AW went.
Yeah, I think that Sledgehammer might actually be the best with competitive right now. I'm not sure if they're the best at responding to the community. I think Treyarch's better, but I think the way that they kind of make their base games, especially Advanced Warfare, with the way that they integrate competitive, it's always really promising. So I don't really mind if the gameplay isn't top notch. I just want to see them finally get competitive right, properly for once. So a proper rank system would be dope for sure.
Yeah, agreed. If we got London Docks comes back as well, I'd take that. I'd enjoy Docks. TTF
like that
is a bit tragic, but I'd be down for London Docks to come back. I was actually one of the bright spots of that game, but not USS Texas, please, if you're listening. We don't need that one.
If Docks has vibrancy rather than depressing grey skies and rain like London does, I would actually enjoy it. But who knows? You can never really tell with London weather.
Speaking of CTF,
go on,
what do you guys prefer out of the Control and CTF? Because a lot of people are talking if it's World War II, it's going to be CTF again instead of Control. Obviously, World War II, the original one, had Gridiron in it, which actually at the time was getting voted on by the pros whether it was going to be Gridiron or CTF, and they went with CTF. Yeah. But I heard it was really close. So, what do you guys think would be the third game mode for if it was World War II too?
I think we should wait until the end of the season to see how Uplink progresses. If it turns into a slightly different game mode and there are different rules that make it slightly better by the end of the year, then I assume that we'll probably get. Yeah, I assume we'll get passed over. Did I say Uplink?
Yeah, you're good. You're good.
Oh, okay, whatever. But you know what I mean. Control. If the game is really good by the end of the year and all the maps are working well, I think that they could move it over to World War II too, and it'd be good. But to be safe, they'll probably just take CTF because it was in the last time as well.
It's a good question, Austin. I'm actually really intrigued because I genuinely like Control as a game mode a lot. I think it adds a really nice change of pace because Search and Destroy can be pretty slow, but Control often has a really nice mix between calm before the storm moments where teams are off spawn and there's going to be a big gunfight clash, and it's relatively new, I think, or relatively easy for new players to keep up with. So I'm actually a pretty big Control fan, and CTF I don't know, if I look back at that game, we had docks and it didn't play like a traditional CTF map. You literally just ran the flag down the middle. It was ridiculous. The same on Flak Tower. They didn't play we look at a map I don't know, Standoff or even Raid. You're not too often running the flag down the middle. You're holding one lane, you're overextending the other lane, you're bringing the flag back down the lane you OE'd over, you're holding off the OE for them on the other side. And that's how CTF's traditionally been, and it makes a lot of sense that way. I remember Stronghold in Black Ops 3, even though everyone camped to the back, it played very much like that. You would never go down the middle pretty much. You'd run it one way or the other. That's how CTF plays best. And the only map that had that in World War II was Ardennes Forest. And it actually played fundamentally well for CTF. And there were some great moments on that map, but it was dull to watch.
So boring.
People were camping so hard. You just sit at the back of the map, hold the flag. Oh my God. So my perspective is that CTF needs a lot of things right to go well. And as I say, even if they bring docks back, I don't think it plays good for CTF. It's great at Hardpoint, great for Search, but for CTF, it just didn't work. You're just running it down the middle. It doesn't make any sense. So yeah, my take is I actually think Control might be a safer pick because you're probably going to find some maps that work for it. Whereas CTF, there's a decent chance that just most of the maps play incredibly campy. That seemed to be the playstyle that predominated because in Black Ops 2 and Black Ops 3, especially the North American teams, they played CTF pretty aggro. There was a lot of caps going on. It was only really the European teams in Black Ops 3 that would just sit all the way at the back and camp the hell out of it.
Swanee.
Swanee, yeah. Marky B, all the boys.
Oh, Marky B, that's the one.
Yeah, Marky B was the I guess the normal offender.
Yeah.
So yeah, my take is that I'd actually be kind of down to see control, but we haven't seen it in any other game that hasn't been a track game. So maybe they feel like somehow they have dominion over it, but it didn't happen with Hardpoint. So I'd be happy to see it come back, and maybe even the pros test it, right? Like they can try out control CTF. I don't know, as you say, with Gridiron.
I mean, CTF's really hard because it's all about the spawns, actually, because you want them to spawn not on the flag. You want them to spawn kind of far away, so you have to make a decision whether you rotate back to your flag or do you overextend. And I remember the last couple of times we've had CTF, you're spawning like right on your flag, so there's no decision making. So like as soon as you get that wave of kills, they're going to spawn on the flag. So you need to get continuous waves of kills instead of just that one, get the flagpole, hold down your cuts, and then that enables you to get a point. But we haven't had a good CTF in many years, so I hope it doesn't come back personally.
Last good one was probably Black Ops 3, eh?
Black Ops 3?
But even then it had issues because of the weird...
Black Ops 2 was the last good one.
Yeah, Advanced Warfare wasn't great at all. Did they even get rid of it from Advanced Warfare?
Yeah, they got rid of it after COD Champs.
Yeah.
It did not play well.
Yeah, and even in Black Ops 3, I would have preferred just to have Uplink, to be honest, and just have what we have today, a three game mode meta. There definitely is a European Call of Duty fan at the time. It was so tragic because every time any European team would win map 1 and 2, we would just always lose game 3 and 4 because European teams were terrible at Uplink and CTF. So I would have been down for another Hardpoint personally.
Bro, try being an ANZ fan, mate. We couldn't even win a map that year. Oof.
Man, it was rough. It really was a rough time.
No ANZ teams even made it out of bracket in Black Ops 3 Champs. It was horrid.
So what happened to Millennium that year? That was like the Swanee couldn't make it, I was looking forward to seeing that team in action. Miracles filled in and all that. Damn. Crazy how time moves on.
Yeah.
All right, so I guess speaking of matches, let's talk about the power outage. So this is not something that we expected. I guess when we talked last week, it was kind of underway, but
just starting. Yeah.
Yeah, we hadn't really. I don't think anyone had really clocked on that it would have a major impact. Some people were just saying, okay, you should have just gone ahead regardless, stuck with the schedule. I'm pretty happy what they've done. I think they've probably made the best out of the situation they could have done. But what do you think was the main issue with this? Because I know that some people certainly didn't have power, and I hope anyone listening that was affected by this is now all okay, and things are getting back to normal as quick as possible. But yeah, I mean, really tough situation for a number of the pros. And I think really the main issue is, I guess, the practice situation. The fact that maybe you guys in Atlanta, we're still being able to scrim without too much difficulty. Los Angeles Thieves, Florida, these teams that weren't really affected. And then a lot of the Texas teams were affected. And even if they could have played the matches on Thursday, there was the concern that these teams hadn't been able to get the practice that the other teams have been able to get, especially in advance of such an important week for seeding. So maybe that was their main thought process behind it. But what do you think, Austin? Do you think they've done the best out of a bad situation, or would you have done it differently?
Oh, definitely. So only 4 teams were unaffected by this. Us, Toronto, LAG, and I think Florida wasn't. But the other 8 teams were all affected in some way. And so when they made the call, I think it was Wednesday night, I mean, there was a lot of uncertainty of how when people were getting power back, how stable the power was going to be. They also wanted some competitive integrity because, like, for instance, our team's been practicing steady throughout the week, and a team like I don't know if Dallas or Minnesota or New York's gotten like consistent practice this week, so that's kind of unfair if we had to play one of them. So I think everyone's been asking for more Call of Duty anyways. Having it go from a Monday through Sunday, 3 matches a day, except for on that Monday, is going to be, I think, great for the league. I think it gives the Texas teams a chance to recuperate this weekend and come in with a full head of steam. So I definitely agree with it.
Yeah, I also agree with it. I think that the teams needed it. It would have been completely unfair if some teams were finding out new metas or finding out different ways to play, and then they come back to the league and they've got an advantage. So I think it's fine. It just sucks for me on a personal level because I'm working for 3 of the days that the matches are on, and I won't be able to do like all the graphs and stuff for Twitter. But we're still covering those, I think, and it'll be fine. I'll just miss 7 matches or something. 8 matches. But yeah, they'll be fine. It was needed.
Yeah, exactly. It could be worse. I mean, that's the thing. That's all I'm hoping this week is that the previous weeks are so frustrating. They say it starts at 3 p.m. Eastern. You tune into the stream, and it doesn't start until at least 20 past. And it's very frustrating as a fan that isn't. I think if you're in the States, it's probably all right regardless. But even in the UK and in Europe especially, and also for you guys in like New Zealand and APAC region, it's not easy because I saw someone was saying maybe in the comments or on Reddit that they were looking forward to the OpTic versus FaZe match, and they tuned in at it said it was going to be on at 11. So they tuned in at 12, thinking, okay, it's going to be map 3, map 4, going to be the business end of the series, and it was still Rokkr versus Empire, and they were like, well, I have to go to bed now, I'm not even going to get this last series. And that final series, OpTic versus FaZe, started at maybe like past midnight in the UK, and that an hour and a half. That was when the series is meant to finish. So I don't know. I see. I definitely hope that they can get. I know it's always like this, and it's just how it tends to be. But it is. Surely it can't be too much to ask just to have the series when you'll say you're going to have the series, or at least try and make it as close as possible. If it's a 3-0, like get it going, right? Because even if it's 3-0, 3-0, 3-0, it still just about sometimes hits the time like when it's meant to be. I wonder, Rustin, if that like affects you as a team if you're practicing, because like from my perspective, if I'm like, all right, my match is at 11 or whatever it'd be, like 4:30 Eastern, then I'm having a scrim set preparing for getting on to play at that time, but then the matchup ends up actually starting at 5:30, as it quite often does. Then due to replays and they play a load of adverts and so many pre-match discussions, then maybe that even affects how warm you are as a team, I guess.
So like to begin, like I understand why they have the schedule the way they do, like starting at 3 and then having 4:36. It doesn't lend to the best schedule for EU, even if they started at those times, but it lends itself to have the best schedule for NA, which is where the majority of the viewership's going to come from. West Coast, that's noon for them, so you can't really have it any earlier than that. Also, it allows the teams to practice, because I saw a lot of questions of why they start at 3. It allows teams to get that warm-up in at 1. So you come in hot, you're not coming in cold. And people say, well, why don't you get on earlier? So the LA team getting on that would be 9 a.m. for them to get up, or 10 a.m. I think, to get up and warm up and get ready. So just across the board, they want everyone to be on equal footing and come in hot, not come in cold to these matches, which was, I think, something they addressed in the off season. So I'm glad they made that the perfect change for that. And then I think they desperately need a pre-show, like desperately need something to start at either 2:30 or 2, because they say the matches are starting at 3, but in reality they're starting the stream at 3, and they kind of give you guys like a wrap up of yesterday's matches, the day before's, and then they give sponsored section, or not sponsored, but they give shout outs to their sponsors, they do commercials, then they slowly get into it, and then it starts at like 3:20, 3:30. So one, as a fan, it's super hard to watch because you don't really know when the matches are starting, and you don't get a pre-show to tell you what's happened for the stage. You're not getting that recap. Like even I watch a lot of Netflix. Every new episode, you get a recap of the episode before, just in case you forgot. And like you don't get that in the CDL, which is kind of annoying as a fan. I don't know the ins and outs of the broadcast team, so I don't know why there isn't a pre-show. I don't know why they don't do that, but I think that would solve the issues with the start times for the 3:00 games. But I think it's just them getting into the groove and learning the timings for the 4:36, and then getting that closer to where it's supposed to be. And I think that will get better as the weeks go along. But yeah, this as a competitor, this week was kind of tough because we were supposed to play at 6, and we started I think at like 8 against Chicago. So like we had a warm up at 3, I think, and then by the time you're supposed to get ready, I think it was actually 4. So by the time we played, we would have been perfect. And then you're kind of sitting around shooting bots, doing 3v3s, and then you got to get in. You're still waiting for that match before you, because it could end at 3 map, a 3-0, it could be a 3-2. So you just consistently have to be warm. So it's tough, but wasn't horrible this week. I think it will continue to get better.
Yeah, I'll just touch on the pre-show. I think there's something. It's probably because it's all online, and so you can't have the people there to like talk to them and like actually have those one-to-one conversations that they've had in previous years. But then you also look at the CDL in general, and have they like ever had a pre-show with players?
Not
The
really.
CDL, like, yeah, there was a CWL thing, eh? There was like Black Ops 4, and like they'll bring on like 3
We've
players.
never really had a
from
pregame or postgame show.
But
Yeah.
but the CWL did. Remember?
They
still,
had like a
hot
tiny
mic
one
and
at the
stuff.
end where they kind of wrapped it up and then sent
No, it
it.
was before. It was before. They had like they brought on players and they did like all their talks, and it was like an hour long.
Oh, those were like pre-filmed.
Yeah, it was
like
like hot
segments.
mic, right? Was
Yeah,
that
hot
what
mic.
it was?
Yeah.
Which I would still,
Yeah.
I would rather have that.
Exactly.
Yeah, it
That's
was
the
good.
point. That's the point I'm making. Like they need a show like that actually like stands out. So that was my thinking.
I guess
is that
it's
it was
tough to do
online.
online. Yeah.
And
They
so
do have
that's
that
probably.
though. They have the barracks
They-
with TV. I just watched the newest episode with Hex.
But they should make that the intro to the stream.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so, yeah, I get that. But then I think the matches going late isn't really a problem. I think it's mainly just a problem for the players. I think the actual CDL loves that it goes long because they get more time live. So it doesn't really matter to them. And then the start times for us here, the later it goes, well, the later it starts, actually the better for me.
Yeah, it's better
because
for you. Yeah.
the stream starts at 9 a.m. So if the game starts at 9:30, I'm chilling. I can just lie in bed for a bit. So, yeah.
That's fair.
It is what it is. I think it's only inconvenient for like Europe, and so that
it's-
sucks. But you can't.
I don't know.
really
It's just interesting because like
everyone all the time.
that match, like OpTic v FaZe or whatever, because it was so late. Like it definitely would have more viewers if it was earlier. That's the thing. Like yes, they benefit from being live longer, but like Europeans are basically just asleep. So I think it missed out on a bit of viewership there. I don't really know. It's tough to say, but it goes
They've
both
done their
ways.
research, and they've also.
Yeah, they probably.
I think
know.
this is heavily on like the traditional sports because every great matchup, like let's say in football, the best matchup is going to be at prime time at like the 8:30 start time
Mm.
because that's just like they want that to be like the cherry on top for the day. So that's pretty much how it's. I would assume they're going to be scheduling this in the future, where they kind of work their way up into like the.
No, the way they do it makes perfect sense. Like, I'm super happy with how it goes. Like, it starts at perfect time in North America and in Europe and in Australia. It's just like, if the matchups began when they were meant to start, then it would be absolutely fine. Like, if you're in Europe, you can still watch a match at 11. But watching at 1 is like, all right, come on.
Yeah, that's really tough.
It seems like they cater the schedule to the game's going to be like a 3-1, and we're going to start the next game straight away. And it's like, no, it's not going to work. It's going to be a 3-2. Maybe you'll get like a restart on map 1, and so it's like a 6-map series, and then they can't start the next match for half an hour, and it's like, well, that took 2.5 hours. And it's just,
I think they just have to. They need more reps. I think it's just like any team. The broadcast team doesn't. I mean, you can only do so many dry runs. They just need to learn how long each segment needs to be, how long the commercials actually need to be, and I mean, it was just week 1, so I'm hoping by like stage 2 and 3, like we are actually starting matches 4:36. You know, we're starting right on them. They have good content filler in between, not just a timer. They have like a. I'm hoping they're thinking about doing a pre-show or a post-game show because I feel like they're missing a lot of viewership there. I feel like that's just
we'll do it.
The easiest.
We'll do it free.
Yeah, I feel like that's just the easiest like bag to catch. Just having like a post-game where you just have a nameless or anybody just talking through like what happened on the Moscow versus Atlanta and Chicago, what happened in the S&Ds, what major storylines are going into the next day, and then the next day you pick it up. Oh, pregame. This is what we have. Go through all the predictions. Like I don't think we've seen like the broadcast talent do any
that's a good
predictions.
point. They used to do that like a lot.
Yeah,
they might not like
No,
put them
like-
up on the screen, but they used to say what their predictions were. I don't know.
Yeah, like I feel like they're really dropping the ball in like the marquee match. Like you could dive into some real cool like statistics there and like show, you know, who has the head and even like the marquee player they did. I think they had Scump versus us, maybe. I'm not sure. Like they just say it's him. They don't do any cool charts, graphs, statistics. I feel like once they get more into the groove of the season, they'll hopefully be able to better utilize that and like build off of that. I just hope because I know COVID's been really hard. They definitely didn't expect to be online. So I hope it's just like a learning process each week, and they pick up things that they need to get better on, improve, and then by champs we're like fully in gear.
Yeah, that would be great to see. I think that will probably happen. I guess speaking of something, go on.
Oh, okay.
Go on,
I was going to say, unless they get to champs and champs is on LAN and they forget everything they've done all year, which is possible. But moving on.
Yeah, hopefully that's not the case. I'm just hoping for LAN, maybe. It'll happen at some point.
Yeah.
So another thing that, talking of things to improve, there's been some discussion lately on, yes, we've got the Super Week this time, but a normal week, and I imagine it will go back to being a normal week, is matches on Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, 2 Thursday, 2 Friday, 3 Saturday, 3 Sunday, which is certainly an interesting way to do it, I think. Formal was talking on the OpTic Podcast 13 or whatever, that he feels like the CDL are just milking them for viewership, and by not having more matches on a single day. Now, for me in the UK and in Europe, 2 matches a day is actually really nice because it finishes by like apparently 11, but usually it finishes at a reasonable time. 3 matches can get a bit tough, and any more than that would be a nightmare. So the fact that they're doing 10 matches per week kind of necessitates that they have the way it's currently done. But I can certainly see an argument, especially from the pros, the fact that they're like, well, we play 4 matches per week, or we play 4 days per week, or we could be playing on 4 days per week, even though you only play 2 matches a week max. But there's still 4 playing days per week, and then there's 3 off days. And I'm sure like people like Scump especially think, well, I have less practice time than I should, because some of the teams maybe I want to practice against the playing matches. And also maybe I want to stream during those days, and then I can't stream during prime time because there's games on. So, do you feel, Austin, that there's maybe too many playing days and they should condense it like we typically had, Friday, Saturday, Sunday? Or, I kind of maybe feel like this is the only way it works with the current format. But
yeah, I mean, when you're going to play 10 games every weekend, you would have to do 3-4-3 probably to make sense. Have Saturday be the 4-day, 4 games a day, and that would just be a really long day. I think having a day where there's only 2, I don't know. I would rather have 3 a day for those 4 days. So then you're getting a lot more matches in. I do think having the 4 days is a necessity. I don't think having 4 matches a day, even though the players want that, to make that work with only 1 stream would be super hard. You would get a lot of like jet lag, like viewership lag. Like people wouldn't want to watch 10 hours a day every day, so it would be really difficult. So I think the schedule we have is on the viewership side is really nice. On the player side, I understand where it's coming from, because they want like the old MLG days where it's like you're playing 4 times within 1 day, and you're in bracket, and then you play up to like 7 times within the Saturday, Sunday. But unfortunately, like the way Bravo streams and Charlie and Delta has worked in the past, it's really hard to have that, because you're just tacking on expenses and you're not really bringing in a lot of more viewership. I believe like when you have a Bravo stream, it's not like you're bringing in another 100,000 viewers. You're kind of splitting it between however many streams you have compared to the one base. So having that 1 stream, I agree. Like have that be your main channel, and then I just hope they better schedule the matches so players can have like if you're gonna play on that Sunday, you'll have that Monday off, and then you'll have 3 days of practice. So you don't play till that Friday maybe. So you have 3 good days of practice, and then you go in. So I don't know. I feel like so far the schedule hasn't really affected us too much. We have that off day after we play, and then right back into practice. You get 3 to 4 days of good practice, on to the next one. So
as a viewer,
I think it only affects players.
Yeah, exactly.
I was going to say,
you said
it only affects the streamers.
Yeah.
It only
as a
affects the
viewer,
streamers, I think.
It doesn't matter. Like I think it actually helps that it's less games, because especially for us, when we're covering the games and stats and like doing the graphs and putting everything up and providing all this content, it's far better when it's only 2-3 games. If we were covering 8 games a day, we would need twice the manpower to be able to actually get that out. So for us, it's perfect. As a viewer, I think it's fine. And I think the major tournaments are going to be like a really nice cherry on top at the end, because we're not getting spoiled with matches. We're getting kind of enough to like keep the kick going. And then once the actual tournament comes in, it might be a more enjoyable experience because we're not so oversaturated to the games. So, I think it's good. I think it's a perfect balance, and I think people will actually appreciate it once the season's done.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think, like, as a viewer watching from home, especially like people a bit more casual, like my housemates kind of been getting into watching it a bit more lately, or like I'll bring it up on the telly and we can kind of watch it a bit in the evenings. And because he's new to it, like he's not going to be watching 4 games in a row, like Alpha, Bravo, Station, all this at the same time. Like he's just going to want to tune in for one match here, one match there. And that's a very decent proportion of like people who watch competitive Call of Duty. Like there's so much fluctuation in the stream numbers. People are hopping in, people are hopping out all the time, watching matches that they want to. And when there's so much going on, it's really tough. The one thing that I would say is that at LAN events, so when I went to like London 2019, Anaheim 2019, compared to London 2020, like the franchise home series, was that it was a so much better atmosphere at the event when there was just so much going on. Like there was main stage, but there was also Bravo, Charlie, Delta. I mean, it was absolute chaos, like to cover. Yeah, but like at an event format, like at a LAN, having more going on makes for like the best possible spectator experience at the event. At home, probably a different story, but definitely at London 2020 at the home series, it was like there was only one match on at a time on the main stage, and it was like Paris versus LAG or something, and nobody really cared, and people were watching the amateur games. It just wasn't quite the same buzz of when like, oh, there was a match on main stage that was like 100 Thieves versus Reciprocity. There was also OpTic were playing FaZe on the side station and all the buzz behind that. So you kind of miss that to some degree. But yeah, definitely agree. As a viewer from home, at least for now, it's this is the best that could be possibly done. So along those lines, Super Week, let's hop into it. There's 20 matches in 7 days. Huge matches here, and they actually rescheduled it somewhat. So last week we pointed out a couple of matches which we thought were key ones to watch for this week, but actually some of the days, or at least the order of the matches, have been changed a fair bit. So maybe Omar can chuck up on screen the full schedule at the moment for those watching on YouTube. But well, I think we're going to go through maybe by day and talk about whichever match particularly stands out to us per day, and then well, see exactly where we think that one might head up. So firstly, on the Monday, February 22nd, tomorrow, as you guys are probably watching this is the only day where there's only 2 games. So the first one is Mutineers versus LAG, and then the second game, which I guess I'll throw to you, Austin, is Atlanta FaZe versus Toronto Ultra. Ultra looked super good last week against the Mutineers, super strong in their hard points. And we haven't seen too much of them in search as of yet. So FaZe favourites here, but Ultra very much looking like an underdog, upset, dark horse type of team.
Yeah, I mean, they're going to be like a real dark horse this whole entire season. I think this is a really big week for them, actually. I think this is like they're either going to be like a top 5 team, or they're going to kind of sit in the middle of the pack, kind of like last year, because they face Atlanta and then Chicago back to back. So I'm like, I believe last year we had their storyline was they would get 2 maps and come so close and keep on losing. It's like, do they break through that? Do they finally start taking some big W's along the way, or do they kind of stay in that same mold as last year? I think they're super scary. It's called a trap match, I believe, when like you kind of, it's easy to underlook them, and then they come out and they play phenomenally. So like, I think they're going to be a really scary hardpoint team. I haven't seen too much of the other 2 modes yet, so I'm kind of interested to see what they come out with this week. But this is definitely a team that could come out and take some hard points and then make the series kind of scary. It's not where you want to be. Like, you don't want to be in a game 5 against anybody. So I see Toronto really pushing a lot of these top teams to the limits. We're definitely preparing a lot for them. We're not overlooking them for that Monday match, because we know you can't slip up. You can't take a day off against anybody, especially with 12 teams and everyone's so stacked this season. So it's going to be a close one against them. Definitely not going to be a blowout.
Yeah, I think that game's going to be close. Ultra great at hardpoint, but we haven't really seen how good they are at the other modes yet. And we know that FaZe is bloody good at SND, like ridiculous. Probably best team in the game right now, just based off their last matches. But yeah, I'm excited for that match, but it should be reasonably close. I still favor FaZe.
Yeah, I think I agree. I mean, the Ultra team is one that I think they have players that can like so easily just take over a map, but they kind of need, if they want to win a big series, they need one of their superstars to just take over a map. Clearnix to go like 1.5 KD and drop 40 kills or whatever, or Bance to do the same thing, or Cammy to do the same thing, or Methods to do the same thing, as they all can do. So they kind of need that, whereas FaZe can get the job done even without someone completely taken over. So still think FaZe are favourites. The Tuesday games, this is where we get into the 3 games a day. And well, certainly going to be long nights. Lots of content for you to cover on the channel. So the matches for the day are Mutineers versus Legion, then Royal Ravens, New York Subliners, then Minnesota Rokkr versus the Seattle Surge. The one I want to point to here, you guys can of course have your own takes on which match you think is most interesting, but I wanted to point out the London one because London versus New York already is quite a nice little rivalry going on there. And then we've got this Parasite team, of course. And London have had, to this group, the easiest possible start they could have had in theory. They start up against Seattle, now they play New York. Their final 3 games, they actually play 4 games this week, I mean, as a lot of teams do, which is going to be tough. They play New York, then they play Dallas the next day, then Los Angeles, then Minnesota. So if they lose this series to New York, as they're probably underdogs, I think it's fair to say, then you're very much looking like an 0-5 run for London. Like, it's going to be tough for them to rebound if they lose these couple of series. So I think I'm really looking at this one. I think this is where London need to bounce back. They definitely caught fire a little bit towards the latter half of that Seattle Surge series, but their Search and Destroy was pretty weak outside of Alex's 1v3 on Checkmate. And New York seemed to be catching a little bit of steam right here, even though a lot of fundamental mistakes they still made in that matchup against LA Thieves. So, really excited to see this one. I think it can go down to the wire. A lot on the line for both teams in a very tough pool.
Do you want me to go, Austin?
Yeah, you go.
Okay. Well, London, the one thing that I think is tough for them is that, sorry. New York is actually, I think, a surprisingly tough match. Like, we saw them play against LA and they looked on par with LA, just tiny mistakes that let them fall short. And also Mac, who was supposedly their best player heading into this year, having an extremely rough series. If he played normal in that series, they win 3-0. So I think this week they've definitely got the hardest run out of anyone. If we're looking at the other matches on that day, we've got Florida versus Paris. I think that game should favour Florida, but Paris, we still don't really know their potential. And then the last game of the day, I think Minnesota Rokkr versus Seattle Surge is actually a lot closer than it seems. So I think that game will be tight as well. But if we're just looking at London versus New York, I think New York blow them out, honestly, this week.
I mean, my matchup to look at is definitely Florida and Paris. Florida lost last week, won the 3 to Toronto, so they're already down in a very hard pool with us in Chicago. So they have 2 matches to open up the week that they should be favored in. Definitely not just a shoe-in, but they should be favored in both of these. They're going to have to come out and play, at the level they should be, because they need to come out as 2-1 record after that Tuesday night match. So if they lose one of these matches, they're going to be in a hole that, they're going to be in 4th place. They're going to start in the losers bracket, and that's definitely not what you want in the first major. I think they need to win these 2, because if Toronto is able to steal one of either the Chicago or Atlanta match, then Toronto's looking very, very, very good for a 2nd, 3rd place finish, and then Florida will be kind of on the outside looking in. So they need to get in, do what they have to do, and win these 2 matches clean.
Yeah, I agree. That's a great shout. Florida absolutely have to go 2-0 here to have a chance of making winners, you would think, in theory. So the Wednesday games, as I mentioned, Empire Royal Ravens should be relatively clear-cut. Then LA Seattle. I mean, again, as you say, Lion, really excited to see how Seattle can perform, because Gunless was on fire. Looney had his fair share of good maps. Octane, looked decent at times as well. So, and Pristini had his moments for sure. So they have 2 tough matchups to start up the week against Minnesota and LA. Then the final match of the day, this is the one that I'm really excited to see, is OpTic versus Toronto Ultra, because this is OpTic's first foray back into the league after their loss to Atlanta FaZe. How quickly can they bounce back? Again, Ultra have one of the hardest schedules to start off the week with Atlanta and OpTic back to back. But yeah, I mean, if Ultra can do well in that phase series, maybe go game 5, you think up against this OpTic one, they're feeling super confident, right? Like, if they have a good series against Atlanta, they come in here knowing that OpTic Search and Destroy is maybe a little bit weak. OpTic maybe haven't had quite the chance to practice this last week due to the power outage situation. So, you know, if I'm Ultra and I have a decent result against FaZe, maybe go game 5, I'm feeling super confident in this series. And if I'm OpTic, like, I'm concerned, Austin, for the same reasons you said you're somewhat concerned about facing these guys as well.
Yeah, I mean, their hard point, both of these teams, their strengths match up against each other very nicely, actually, for like a matchup like this. I mean, it's literally a coin toss for me on that matchup. I mean, OpTic should have it, but with everything going on, and if Toronto have a good showing on Monday, then I don't know. I mean, it's definitely a 50-50 on this one. I also think the LA and Seattle game, even though it might not seem it, I think that one's kind of a trap game as well. I think LA is coming in on a high this week. They went 2-0 last week. I think Seattle's finally starting to find that footing that people thought they would. I know Gunless performed at an insane level in their second matchup. Prestini was still playing on 130 ping, so I'm hoping if Octane kind of finds some of that form. I know he played well in control, not really in the hard points, but I'm hoping if he can find, you know, a better form, if Gunless keeps it up, and then Prestini's kind of on a good ping, I guess. Like it sucks how internet plays such a big factor into this, but if Prestini's on a, you know, like a good footing, level footing, then I mean Seattle could definitely take that matchup as well.
Yeah, I'm just gonna take a look. I think so. We're on Wednesday, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm just making a scoreboard at the exact same time.
It's all good.
Dallas versus London. I think I actually can't wait though to see Parasite play against Crim6. I think they'll be quite.
That'll be fun actually.
Yeah. Yeah, this whole day, I think there are teams that should be clear winners. I think Empire should win. LA should win. I think that's the most non-clear cut is LA versus Seattle, because Seattle, we still also don't really know what their potential is. And then OpTic versus Ultra. Austin, you made a really good point about how these teams are very similar in terms of their strengths. And I think that SND is also a weakness for both these teams. So that should be quite interesting to see who made the biggest strides in SND during the week off, or, you know, power outage. Do you reckon they did some behind the scenes chalkboard level strats?
VOD review.
Yeah, VOD review. But yeah, so I don't know. I think all these games should be pretty one-sided, but when you look deeper into the matchups, it's actually a slightly different story.
Game 5's on the cards for sure.
Yeah. I think so.
Thursday, I mean, the bangers just don't stop, I tell you. So Thursday, we've got Rokkr versus New York, and this could be like a phenomenal series if things go. If New York look good, I mean, Rokkr are still a little bit of an unknown quantity in the sense that they just got bodied on that map for Moscow against LA. So it's strange because they're so good at search, and yet like they have the potential to just get blown out in a respawn, which is pretty rare for a team that's going to compete for championships if that's what your aim is. But this series could be great. Then you've got OpTic LAG, which is the one I talked about on the last episode as being like, I mean, the big questions about the search and destroy. I think they swapped around maybe the order of these. Like maybe LAG was going to be first before. Actually, maybe it was the other way around. I'm not really sure. But regardless, if this goes game 5, you've got to be kind of concerned if you're an OpTic fan. LAG realistically just, you'd imagine if they steal a respawn, they could be in a good position to take this the distance. And then I think what isn't the matchup of the day now is FaZe versus Florida Mutineers, because Florida back in this series, if they do go 2-0 against LAG and Paris, they're into a series they're probably going to be pretty happy about, given that they beat you guys at the Kickoff Classic. They're catching a bit of momentum right here. If you guys win your earlier series against Ultra, maybe you're thinking, okay, like we're kind of comfortable now. But Florida still have a lot to play for, and got the better view at the Kickoff Classic. So this could be a cracker, Austin. I don't know. I feel like game 5 coming on.
I think it really depends on how Florida does Monday, Tuesday. Because if they win both those matches, then they're still in contention for the 3 seed, and they're going to have to steal one against either us or Chicago, so they'd be coming in with that fire. If they do drop versus LA, Paris, or both, I think that puts their team into a real funky spot. I don't think that would happen, though. I think they're going to go 2-0, so I think it's going to be a really tight match. I think this is another one where kind of our strengths don't match up. I think Florida's going to be like a better hardpoint team than most people think, and I think obviously we have like the 2-3-5 looking really good right now. So I'm really curious to see how it goes. I think if we start the series hot, I'm fairly confident that we'll be able to close it out pretty early. But Florida's a really scary team because you don't really know what you're going to get on that day. For me, the matchup that I'm really watching is the first one of the day. It's going to be the Minnesota-New York. I think New York actually played very well against Dallas. I think was it Dallas?
They played LA super tight. Yeah.
Yeah. I think they had a really good chance to win that. I think all three maps, I think that hard point, they were one decision away from winning on that P3. I think on the S&D and Control, I think they were really close to winning. I think it's really tough because the roles right now don't work on that team, but I think Minnesota, they're coming in looking at this as like, we still have a chance to be the 1 seed. We just have to win out, and I think this is going to be a really important game for them. I think Seattle, they're going to make it past just because they're so good at S&D. New York, on the other hand, they're going to play pretty fundamentally well in that S&D. It's going to make it a little bit tougher. They're still going to have to take a respawn, so I think New York's pretty sound in hard points. It's just really good matchups all the way through. So that's definitely one that I'm watching because if Minnesota loses that, I'm pretty sure they're going to be out of contention for that 1 seed, which everyone's fighting for this week.
Yeah, if I'm looking at the matches, honestly, so we're on to Thursday.
Yeah.
Sorry, boys, I'm a little bit
it's all
behind
good. We can carry it. I mean, we're nearly nearing the hour mark anyway, so
just posting random stuff.
We can take it through.
If we're looking at Thursday, I think it really depends if New York start off hot against London. If they 3-0 sweep them and look really good and look like they are playing to their potential, I think that could be a really close match because Rokkr also last week with that win over Dallas, I think are on a hot streak and running high on confidence. And so that game, I think, could be close or it could be a blowout. This next game, OpTic versus LA, I think we kind of know it's not going to be that close. But the S&D with OpTic
matches. My predictions are awful.
I think this is one of those ones where I would never pick the underdog, like because it's too far fetched. But then the S&D of OpTic is so unknown. It's an unknown quantity of the run. Yeah. And then Florida versus FaZe, we already know that this matchup is kind of toss up. So yeah, I'm excited to see all these matches. Yeah. Sorry about my
No, it's all good. It's all good.
Yeah, I'm posting for our website. Yes.
Okay, so Friday is a little bit maybe, I don't know, some of these matches are still interesting. Maybe a little bit of a lull in terms of the absolute bangers because we start out with LA versus Ravens. At this point, I'm pretty convinced that Ravens are going to be like, it's probably chalked for them, all things considered. At least getting out to the winners bracket. So probably they're thinking, well, it doesn't maybe matter so much where you place because if you're in the losers, yeah, realistically, does it matter if you get that bye in the losers or if you're just in first round? I guess there's some prize money and some points implications. So I guess it does matter to a degree. But at the same time, if you're in losers anyway, you might even prefer having one matchup to like kickstart your campaign. Maybe I don't really know. There's different ways to look at it, but probably LA are going to win this. Then you've got Ultra versus Legion, which again could be close. I mean, once again, it depends how Toronto have done earlier on in the week because they start out with their tough matches and they finish with the easier ones compared to Florida, which is completely the other way around. And then the final match of the day, this is actually the one I'm excited to see, is the rematch between Empire and New York, especially if New York put up a good fight against the Rokkr, where, you know, Rokkr, of course, beat Empire last week. We've got Clayster versus his old team again. At the Kickoff Classic, this wasn't close at all, but they're looking a lot better now. So I think this series can actually be pretty decent, but it depends because Empire might just go back to the drawing board after last week and like put their heads down and think, all right, maybe we got a bit complacent. Let's just straight body these fools, and they have the power to do so. So, what do you think about this, Austin?
I think it's got a lot of storylines in this matchup. I don't think the matches are going to be as close on this Friday. I think LA is going to look pretty solid on that first matchup. I think Toronto is going to look really solid in the second one, and then I think Dallas is just going to, because they're going to have to play pretty clean to get that 1 seed. Because Minnesota, I believe, will have the tiebreaker. Minnesota won, so Dallas is also going to have to win out, and they can't take any matches off. So this New York one, they're going to have to get in smoke them, and then get out of there and just hope Minnesota drops one this week, so they can't get tripped up by anybody.
Yeah. Are we on Friday? Okay. Yeah, I think LA versus London looks like a reasonably close match, but if LA play to their potential, it should honestly be their series to win. Ultra versus Paris is interesting because Ultra seems to be the hardpoint team, really strong in hardpoint, whereas Legion seems to be pretty strong in, are they strong in control?
They had a decent result, actually. I don't know.
Maddie has the number 1 control KD right now.
Yeah, they had like a 1.5. They won an offense on Checkmate, which proves they must be like the best control team in the game.
I think, so I don't really know too much about Paris. I mean, I watched their matches, but they didn't show me really enough to be confident on any of their game modes yet. So I think it should be a pretty clear-cut win for Ultra. But if they drop a hard point, then the series is up in the air. And then Empire versus Subliners, I think that'll actually be surprisingly interesting because Subliners, again, they surprised me last week, regardless of Mac not putting up numbers. Clayster surprised me. So if Clayster's playing at Clayster level, who knows?
This is the type of series where Clayster plays at Clayster level, right? Like this is the whole throw you to the wolves, I'll come back leading the pack type stuff right here. Where he gets dropped, he comes back, drops a 2.0.
This matchup's also interesting because New York has 2 before, and if they lose both of those, I'm really curious to see if Max stays on the SMG or if he goes back to the flex, because he looked really, really good on the flex, and I know it was just one match, but he did not look very comfortable on the SMG, and I don't know how much practice they've got this week, so I don't know if he's more comfortable in that role.
That's a good question. All right, so Saturday, this is where, once again, I think Sunday really has some crackers. I mean, Saturday we've got FaZe Legion. On paper, there shouldn't be much to play for at this point. We're expecting FaZe to be pretty comfortable. Still got a win to secure the best possible seed in the winners bracket, but we're imagining Legion are losers at this point. FaZe are guaranteed winners, so probably the series goes to FaZe. Then you've got Mutineers, or not Mutineers, they're Minnesota Rokkr versus Royal Ravens, which is, again, I'm thinking at this point probably that the situations are relatively clear-cut. But then again, like, you've got to win all your matches. I'm expecting Rokkr to win. Then Ultra versus LAG. Could be some close series, but to me, not particularly anything to talk about here, Lion, especially compared to Sunday, where we've got a lot of bangers.
Yeah, I think I don't really even need to go through these matches. I think FaZe is just going to wipe the floor with Paris. I know that's pretty rude, but is what it is. And then Rokkr versus London. Again, we'll have to see where these matches or how these teams are playing throughout the week, because making predictions for day 6 is kind of silly because you don't really know where the team's going to be, who's been practicing, what's been going on. So if I'm just going from gut feeling, it's FaZe, Minnesota, and Ultra winning all these matches. But then, honestly, who knows? So yeah, Sunday's the big day, though. You're right.
Yeah, Saturday and Friday are like full of like the clear favorites. And like the teams that cannot lose, like again, like us, Minnesota and Toronto cannot lose any of these matchups. These are kind of like the ones where like they're not gimmies, but like you gotta like prepare even for the lower ranked teams in your pool because you cannot take anyone lightly this year. Like we cannot lose to Paris. Minnesota cannot lose to London. If you want to finish in the top 2 seeds, because top 3 seeds, because that's such a huge advantage. There's going to be multiple teams at this point competing for that 3rd and 4th seed. So these are the ones where it's almost more exciting to watch to see if a team messes up and if one team plays spoiler.
Yeah, that's fair. Oh my God, it's going to be so crazy to look at what the standings look like. I'm sure a lot of these, there's probably going to be more upsets than we penciled in. And then we've got the Sunday, right? And I'm sure on Sunday there's always going to be things to play for, which is good here. Like there's going to be no matches where there's nothing to play for, I'm pretty sure, because everything should matter for some sort of seeding difference, at the very least. So it starts with New York versus Seattle. This could be a really entertaining series, to be honest, depending on how it's going. Like my expectation still is that both of these teams will end up in losers. So maybe there's not really too much to discuss here. But who knows how the week ends up going if New York look particularly good, or we talked about Seattle potentially as an upset team. If they catch fire, Then you've got OpTic versus Mutineers. This is certainly going to have some implications, I think, for where the seeding is. If OpTic happen to lose one of their matches earlier to, let's say, Ultra, then this is basically a must-win. And Mutineers were certainly a bogey team for OpTic last year. Like, they did not like playing the Florida guys. Had a lot of issues with them. So this could be a cracker. And then to finish off, you've got Empire versus Los Angeles Thieves. First time seeing these two teams match up, I think. And this could be really exciting if both these teams match up well once again. And given the fact that LA are the 2-0 team, they could be the ones seeking that number one spot in the standings to get the bye in the winners bracket. But Empire, I'm sure, aren't going to go down without a fight. So yeah, it's going to be a great Sunday line, I think.
Yeah, I think honestly, I'm most excited for New York versus Seattle, and I know that sounds crazy because I am an OpTic fan, and I guess I'm an LA fan. I don't really care, to be honest. But it's Subliners versus Seattle because I'm a huge fan of the Seattle team. I just really like how they're the biggest underdogs this year. They've got such good talent on their team, but just no one's really giving them a chance. And so seeing them be successful to me would be really exciting. So I want to see them do well this week. But if Subliners are playing well, we don't know if they're going to be amazing yet. But if they are, then this series is going to be tough. I think the second game, OpTic versus Florida, for some reason, I don't think this will be for a number one seed. I don't think Florida are quite in that ballpark at the moment. They could prove me wrong this week, but I think it's more if OpTic slip up this week, this is the game that they need to secure. Otherwise, they'll get knocked down to losers or third seed. And then the final game of the series of the week, I think actually will be key towards seeding. I think LA, they've got Seattle and London. They should go 2-0 to start the week. They should be 4-0 after that. And then up against Empire, I actually will have to see. It's one of these, I have no idea how these matches are going to go because we've got no idea how these teams are going to look after not seeing them for 2 weeks. So honestly, yeah, I don't really mind who wins these series, and I have no idea who's going to. So it's probably going to be a rough week on predictions for me.
This day is where the tiebreakers are going to go wild. I don't really know exactly how the tiebreakers work, but with a 5-game pool play, you're going to get some wonky final day decisions. So you'll notice that LA, Minnesota, and Dallas do not play at all this week. Or LA plays Dallas at the end, but Minnesota and Dallas don't play. Minnesota owns the tiebreaker over Dallas. And then LA owns it over Minnesota. But if Dallas beats LA, then you have this 3-way tie where each of them beats each other in tiebreakers. So then it might go into map win percentage, maybe. I'm not quite sure because they would all be 4-1 at that point. They would all have head-to-head ties. And then they would, I think it would go to map win percentage. So so what this really means is maybe Omar can throw up how the bracket will look for stage 1. So if Dallas finishes second, and then whoever wins, so let's say in Group A, let's say Minnesota wins that group. Whoever finishes third in that group is in the same side of the bracket. So let's say Minnesota finishes first, Minnesota finishes first, Dallas finishes third. So Dallas and Minnesota would be in the same group as whoever finished second in Group B, which right now, let's say, is Chicago. So you would have Dallas versus Chicago round 1, and then whoever wins out of that faces off against Minnesota on that side of the bracket. So it gets really wonky at that point. You're going to have a lot of if this happens, then this will happen. If this happens, then that. So it's very hypothetical. Sunday, you're going to start seeing everyone draw their what if brackets. If this happens, if a 3-2 happens. So I'm actually really excited. Even that Florida match, if Florida does win their first 2 and then beats us and then goes into play Chicago, they're still playing for a 2 seed at that point, I believe, 2 or 3 instead of losers bracket. So it's just so much to play for at that rate.
Man, it's going to be crazy. Yeah, there is so much going on right here. And, there we go. That pretty much finishes off the job. Just before we finish the episode, thanks all for watching. I wanted to run through your guys' thoughts on who's your player to watch this week. So I guess I'll kick us off. I might nick this from a couple of you guys, but thought I'd do it anyway. That's going to be Skyz, because Skyz had a very surprisingly poor series against Ultra. He had he had one of the worst Draftbuff performances of the week. I think this week he's got 20 you can buy him on Draftbuff for 25 points, which is one of the lowest on the entirety of the Draftbuff thing. And for Skyz, like that is like remarkably cheap. So yeah, I'm expecting him to. I mean, look, regression to the mean. I'm expecting him to bounce back to a good level, but he certainly needs to. Like, there's so much talent on that Florida team that if Slacked is outperforming Skyz, there's a bit of a question mark. What's going on there? Like, why is he not putting up the numbers that we expected of him? And he did against FaZe at the Kickoff Classic, and he certainly did last season. So Skyz is my player to watch. Who are you keeping your eyes on, Austin?
So it's kind of tough. I'm going to go with Octane this week. He was the number 2 fantasy performer last season. He didn't have a good week 1 in terms of fantasy. He had a 1.05 overall for Seattle, which is not Octane-like numbers that we're used to. He went negative in hardpoint, which I can't remember the last time that's happened. He's only worth 52 coins for now on Draftbuff. That's ridiculously low for him. Obviously, it's kind of hard to grade each player in Draftbuff the way they do the coins because it's based on the entire season. So far, they only have 1 week, which is why you have Skyz at 25, you have Mac at 20, you have Octane at 52. So I'm expecting Octane to definitely bounce back, have some higher numbers, especially if their SMGs are playing better.
Yeah, for me, it's Mac. But you mentioned Skyz. I had Mac and Skyz on my fantasy team. And they were literally 2 of the bottom 4 performers of the whole week.
I had Skyz to be
Mac's
fair.
the cheapest player right now at 20 coins.
Yeah. And I was running them on my starting lineup. And yeah, so that happened.
Well.
Everyone was saying you had the best team too.
No, everyone was saying Crone had the best team.
Oh yeah, it was like you and Crone.
Yeah, but then when you look at mine, theoretically, it was good. But then stuff happens, so
there's plenty of time to turn it around.
Yeah, for me it's Mac because he also, I think, was the biggest detriment to his team last week in terms of results. I don't mean he's a bad player by any means at all because he's obviously one of the best players in the league. But for what he did to his team, personal stat-wise, was probably the biggest issue, like player-wise, during the week, if you know what I mean. Like on a personal level.
Yeah. Compared to the rest of the team, like, I understand.
It's definitely his role too. Like Tommy not retiring. Tommy stepping down due to injury, had maybe the biggest effect on him because he was the flex player. He was the one playing behind 2 very aggro SMGs. You know, he was the Slayer on that team in the preseason, and then he gets thrust into a role where, like many might say, he was the MP5 last season, but this year, that SMG role doesn't translate the same way. Like this year, the SMG role is very different compared to the MP5 that was like literally the do it all. It was kind of like the PBSH where it's just not the same SMG role as like in other CODs. So like he should be the flex, but with Diamond there, he can't be the flex. He's got to be the SMG. So it's a big change, and you saw it when he put up a 0.57 in control and wasted 35 plus lives, I think it was. Yeah.
Not ideal.
It was 37. That's across 5 rounds. It's too much. You're either playing too fast or you're just not playing correctly as a team. So, well, hopefully he improves.
That was my guy. So I hope he finds his groove.
A lot of talent there, though. So
yeah, he's ridiculously talented. We saw it last
could turn
year.
Around.
Yeah, sure. What did he have KD wise last year? Like a 1.3?
Don't know about that, but like it was pretty good.
He's like a 1.1.
Yeah,
which is good.
It's crazy for his role though. Like
it's good for
him in
for
Awakening. Just took over.
Yeah,
like he was such an influential part of that New York team.
Yeah, other end of the spectrum, you have Awakening, who is again the number 1 fantasy performer. He had 111 points, I believe, week 1. He's worth 90 coins.
I've got him in this week. I feel like this guy, man,
ridiculous.
He's just too good.
I mean, granted,
I don't get it.
I made a video that's touching on this, but like, granted, majority of his points come from S&D 67.
He went like 13 and 6 or something, right?
And because of the way Draftbuff does it, it's highly kill oriented. So he had 1.3 kills per round, which is good for about 55 points S&D wise. He will not do again just based off kills. And his opening duels, he had, I believe, 4 within those 10 rounds. So again, that's another 20 plus points tacked on there. So while he might dive down, he's definitely going to stay probably in the top 5 all season long for scoring.
This guy's crazy.
Out of BMW
anyway.
kids.
Yeah, precisely. Lots of great discussion today. We're really intrigued to hear your thoughts in the comment section below. We will be back at the normal time next week on the Tuesday to break down all the absolute madness that I'm sure will have ensued from the Super Week, breaking down what it's looking like for the major, some of the key storylines, who are the favourites for that, and I'm sure, well, plenty of other storylines and drama that probably will happen throughout the rest of the week. But thanks, Austin and Life, for joining me once again. Thanks for watching as always. Take care, and we'll see you next time.